Hey team, wanted to make a quick video just about the politics that I've been looking at, Project 2025, and I was looking at the wiki page, and it does say that it started in April 2022, 2 years ago, and I think that it's interesting. I don't like a lot of elements of it. I generally say I don't have enough information to have particular judgments about these, but obviously, I will say I am not a political scientist, first and foremost. I've read the wiki page, and I've not done in-depth studies on government to date. So, but I will say that I went through it, I read it, just because I was talking with someone, and they were like, down with Project 2025, and they're saying it was completely horrendous, and I do tend to align more with a lot of the liberal policies of humanism that are associated with the Democrats' platforms more regularly. But I do see that we need both parties and we need both opinions, and because we have to weigh what's best, when, where, and how. But I will say that some things about this Project 2025 do have me a little concerned. And so I wanted to say that. And I don't make political videos. Like I said, I am not a political scientist. It's not my forte, first and foremost. I'm terrible at staying up on them, so I'm not an authority on this. But they do make interesting points. And so it's definitely worth conversing about. These are our governing principles. These are what is moving our country forward. These are going to be accepted as our value system. And I'm going to be honest, I think that it's worth talking about, even if you're not an expert, just saying that, what you have to say and getting feedback in this regard. So I am going to say that some things I went through, and I kind of highlighted different elements. And so I went through and highlighted things that I had questions about, that I should probably look into more, that I didn't really understand what the repercussions would be. Obviously, they have a lot of in-depth studies as to what repercussions there would be, so it's not an easy task to look at and figure out. But I do not dislike the idea of kind of changing up the governmental system, trying to make it more representative. I think that a lot of times getting everyone in on it and understanding all of it, and political intrigues are, I'll make you a deal for this if you give me that. And, I think that's just mind boggling and a little too much. Like, how about but, obviously you want to try and figure out what's working best, but you want everything to be, ethical and responsible and not underhanded, not trying to trick the common the population. You want things to be right up front, and you don't want to be tricked, you don't want to be manipulated, and you don't want to be abused as a part of the voting public, as a part of the human race, that as a part of your country. So I think it's, like I said, there were some things that I definitely need to do more studying, looking into. I don't like the idea of sharply reducing environmental and climate change regulations to favor fossil fuel production. Don't like that at all. I'm very big into environmentalism, though, and I'd love to look more into environmentalism, like in legislation, because I think that maintaining our system, our natural environment in a sustainable way longitudinally is of the utmost importance. 100%. I don't necessarily like the the swap back to fossil fuel, especially since it did say, I have done some reading and says, obviously at some point we will run out. Of course, I just read that there's a bunch under, Antarctica, and if you can get your system under the ice, you can, try and get it for yourself, for your country or whatever, because it's not, and it's like, oh goodness, but I do believe in the renewables, and I love that they have come to the forefront. And we can talk about that. I think I made another video about my love of renewables, and if I haven't, I should, because I think that that's so important. But let's see. Also, I don't know how I feel about the Department of Education being terminated. Transferring it to other agencies, it has me intrigued. I do believe that having more hands-on education is important, especially in being able to take learning from an academic setting and apply it to the real world. I think that a lot of times that does get lost, and I think that that that's great. You do want things to be representative, and you do want to have that hands-on learning, big time. And so I think that that's great. And so I'm curious to see, what other agencies they would transfer to, and how that would look, and how that would, if there would be an overarching. I really wanted to keep something overarching. When I saw this, it was like, we can't just get rid of it. We're not, as education is so important, beyond important. And so it's like, if there was some way, obviously you also want to have, equal opportunity to education, rights to an education for all. I believe in that initiative. I believe in getting people caught up, and I used to study, to be an educator, of course. And so, a lot of initiatives were about eliminating discrimination in the educational system and getting people back up to par, back up where they need to be, in order to get rid of systemic discrimination and systemic oppression. And I do believe in that. So just curious about what that would entail. But I don't want to see it eliminated entirely, because education is so important, and I don't think that it's going to be a part of every system, but I think that we still want to have an emphasis on education itself too. And so I'm curious about what that would mean, but I wouldn't want it to be terminated entirely. Let's see, I definitely didn't like the removal of legal protections against discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and terminating diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and affirmative action. I don't like that at all. I think that we need to be able to protect those people very much, and I don't like the idea of them just taking it away. Because the systemic oppression does still exist. So it's better to try to keep people with that equal opportunity to move forward. I do want to get more numbers on the arrest, detention, and deportation of illegal immigrants. That's so hard because of, obviously the world is a larger system than just our country, and we want to protect people, we want to take care of people, but that we have to have some sort of boundaries and some sort of lines for that. And it's so hard because you feel for these people, and you want to have a perfect world. You want to have an ideal world where people aren't persecuting people. There is no, discrimination. You want that common cause. And I think that the environment for me I feel like that's a great common cause for everyone. But obviously some people don't agree. And this kind of reflected that. Get rid of the environmental element. Let's go back to fossil fuels. But so anyway, I don't agree. I think that, just some might argue you have to be discriminated against in order to move forward, in order to learn what that feels like and to be able to fight against it. And I think that, but you don't want real discrimination. Like, you can't allow real discrimination. um, so proposes deploying the military for domestic law enforcement. I think that that wouldn't be bad. I'm also curious about policies that make law enforcement mandatory, or military service mandatory. You hear about other systems having it, required for like 1 or 2 years. I don't remember which one I'm referencing or how long it was, but it was so long ago that it came up in my rhetoric. But I'm curious about that because I do think that everyone wants to protect our nation, and even if and I like that idea. If it is even domestic, having everyone, that could also serve as an everyone in it together movement. Everyone taking care of each other domestically and abroad, if need be. I'm not a proponent of war. I believe that education would eradicate the need for that. And so I don't believe in war, but I do believe in taking care of each other. I believe in security. The feeling of security is, it's so important, and it's so it makes such a big difference. And that's why the compassion for those who are in war-torn countries, and it's, because everyone, I feel like, deserves security, and that feeling of safety. And I don't want to punish people for trying to help themselves and save themselves from, persecution. I believe in that safety for all and that security for all. But of course, we'd have to fix the entire system. And so, that's, let's fix the whole world. And I think that that's great. That's great. I believe in the United Nations 100%. I'm following them online. But of course, I've not been keeping up on their posts. But I believe that we all should work together, and I feel like we all have a responsibility to each other. Obviously, if we're going to take care, and that comes back to the environmentalism, if we're going to take care of everybody, we need to take care of everybody, and so we need to work together to do that. And so that's very, very complex. I don't believe in capital punishment. Speedy finality of those sentences. I don't believe in capital punishment, and I believe that fair trials are exceptionally important. And I think that full analyses takes time, and so speedy finality of sentences. Of course, I think that is referring to being on death row and then having like months, years where you're just waiting to be murdered, and then eventually you are murdered. And our law system is so slow. That's why they came up with arbitration clauses and trying to get less burden on the court system, so you don't have to wait 2 or 3 years for a case to go through, for justice to like, how much can you lose during that time? How much pain can you endure for damages can can rack up over that amount of time. It's and so it's good. Like I said, I'm interested in the idea of changing the organization of government and a lot of our systems. I'm curious to see if we can make them, especially with technology and the ability to communicate nowadays. It's so easy, and I feel like that can definitely play a huge part in how these things move forward and how things can shift to make them more efficient and what have you. So I think that that's really, really important to look at. But I don't believe in killing people. I believe in education. I know sometimes that's tough, because a lot of people are set in their mindsets and set in their ways. And so, but I feel like there's always education and, determining best practices, and that you can keep learning, keep studying, keep growing. And there's always that common ground, and you can build on that. You don't have to, you can change an emphasis, or, you can make it, you can agree upon. I feel like you can always find that common ground, and you can try and make it work in ways that work for everyone. And it might not be pretty, but if you have the right mindset, then I think, like, if you are willing to actually accept those middle steps, those move my way, I'll move your way. If you are actually willing to do that and have the right attitude about that, I feel like that's what you need. But emergency contraception, project seeks to eliminate coverage of emergency contraception under the Affordable Care Act. Want to persecute those who send and receive contraceptives and abortion pills nationwide. I don't know how I feel about that per se, just because I do like having access to birth control, and I have not had insurance for a few months now, and I remember when it was a right, like, in our state to have birth control. And having those pills, and now they are more expensive, and that means less access. And I do feel like that's not a good thing to limit that access. But of course, abortion is something I feel like life is sacred, and I don't really believe in abortion. And I believe that there's education, and there are ways through this. But I do believe that it is your choice. But I believe life is sacred, and it's one of those things. We're on completely different sides of the spectrum, and so you've got to be willing to listen to each other and hear what they have to say, and you have to have the right mentality, I think, in order to agree on those things or find that common ground. But obviously bad things can happen to people, and that's tough too, if people's lives are in danger and what have you. It's a hard one to figure out. But again, I try not to judge other people and their decisions. I try, to respect that. Obviously, they made a decision for themselves, and I feel like everything is so subjective that sometimes you just have to trust that they knew what was best for themselves at that time. But again, I believe that life is sacred, and I want kids, and I don't have kids yet, and so so I want a family, and but so I do believe life is sacred, and I would want a baby, so it's a tough one. But and then I had to look up what protectionism means, and I did look it up, but I forgot now, of course. So Institute of Health will be reformed according to conservative principles. That I was also curious, what does that mean? Institute of Health, conservative principles. What does that mean? What are the ramifications there? They didn't spell it out on the wiki, but I don't know what that means. Another one was adopting more Christian values, and I believe in perennial values, and I think that a lot of religions have comparable, for good practices that they're preaching, that they are trying to promote and move forward with. And I like to pull from all the perennialistic ideas, and a lot of them are duplicated in different religious beliefs. And so I don't necessarily, I believe in freedom of religion. And so I don't want to just see one religion that we are forcing everyone to ascribe to in our nation. I feel like in other nations that has been a cause for a lot of discrimination and hatred and war and death. And so I believe that, again, that maybe it just comes down to it depends on that individual and, um, what they do with it and what's right for them. And so that, but I do think, like, if they're kind of perennialistic Christian notions that they are pushing, if it's, I don't really necessarily see a problem with that if it's, if they're all, like do good, let's help each other, let's work together sort of policies. I don't, I was just, that was when I was kind of curious, well, what do they mean? I do believe in religious freedom. I do believe in separation of church and state. So I feel like if it's not, there's a lot of alienation there, and that lends itself to the discrimination that they are, of course, eliminating the legislature to get rid of, so I don't really agree with that element at all. Yeah, just basic things that I highlighted as conversational pieces about it. What are your thoughts? And of course, this, I think I actually have been meaning to make this video for a while to talk about it. Like I took this picture probably a month ago. So I was looking into it a month ago and I still haven't talked about it. So a lot of this, a lot has been happening politically. Obviously, it's an election year. And so I don't know if they've come forward with more information or if, they've talked about it. Oh, that's right. Wanting to realign and get rid of like fixtures that don't agree with this political leader, and I think that that's an interesting idea, just because in the way of making things more efficient, not being able to block it and filibuster for hours on end just to stop a conversation from happening. And I feel like you just need to have the conversation, but it comes down, it's so hard, again, the dynamics, because you want every senator, every House representative to be representative of the people, of the population that they serve, and a lot of people are not engaged in the system. I know I can't, I'm so busy throughout the day, it's hard to maintain full on attention to everything at all times. But obviously government is the most important, because it's everyone, and it's where we're going, and it's how we're getting there. So and it's very difficult, and so you want everyone to be engaged. You don't want people to be double dealing, behind the population's back, and what, like talking smack just to, like try, it's, and of course a lot of that you kind of watch political thrillers, on like TV and stuff. And, you know, it's tough to have things that are actually representative, people that are actually representative. And it's hard, obviously, because again, states are huge, districts are huge, and how do you represent everyone in that district? And again, it kind of comes down to what's best for that district. And so that's the argument of decentralized government versus more like federal government, more centralized versus decentralized. So, and I think that that's another tough one to ascertain the balance. And so I am curious. I am interested in making the system better, and trying to keep progress moving forward. And I do think that a little bit of exper- experimentation in that regard is not necessarily a bad idea. I think that perhaps on a smaller scale, I think that would be a better idea. To like microcosmic experimentation. But again, with lack of engagement, there's only one name on the list of people to vote for, because local government, you don't necessarily have the engagement. You don't have the people there. And so you just got one person who's doing it. And then uh, how do you get everyone in on all of the conversations? And, we want everyone to have that ability to fight for what they want. And it's so hard to see, your representative stances on everything. And then you have to say, well, I agree with some of those things, not a lot of the other things. And, so then you have to kind of bandy it back and forth. Well, what's more important, prioritizing and everything. And it's just, so I don't dislike the idea of changing government and experimenting with it, but I don't want there to be like capital punishment, or all and discrimination for like, I don't want anything that's experimental and potentially longitudinally going to be something that we regret. So like I think trying to make it more efficient, 100% good. And I think that that play, and I am intrigued by the idea of like actually letting like a governing body get their legislation passed and just see what happens. I think that would be kind of nice. And if you had that, you had people on your side who are like, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I think that that's not a bad thing, but I don't want those longitudinal ramifications to involve things that I believe are perennialistically deemed as bad, and have proven throughout history to be something that is just regrettable. And I think that any form of persecution that would lead to capital punishment is not a good way to go. I believe in education, and I believe that, a lot of time, you know, arguably could be dedicated to that's not, and that's part of the system. How do we make those roles accessible, and get people in, and get that education that they need to be able to do those roles and do that part while being educated? It's difficult, it's tough. So a lot of systems juggling and experimentation is good, but I don't want to see pain and suffering to move people forward. So that's the video I want to make. This got way longer than I wanted it to be, but I am interested in this. I don't want to see people persecuted longitudinally, or short term. I don't want there to be consequences, and I don't want there to be regrets. So, and I feel like some of these things that they are discussing might lend itself to history repeating itself in a way that is not for good. So, what are your thoughts? Tell me about it, and we can have a conversation. Bye.